Good morning to you. For Telesur, I'm Regan Devines in Caracas, Venezuela. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to our morning news program. Our top story takes us to Ecuador. Supporters of the Citizens' Revolution of President Rafael Correa will stage a major rally to back the socialist and progressive leader. They will also express dissent with the destabilization measures being carried out by the right-wing opposition. Correa made a few statements while a convoy of anti-government protesters were approaching the capital to join in on a national strike called for this Thursday. Correa defended their right to protest but accused them of attempting to destabilize the country.
This Thursday will be crucial. They want to halt the country's activities, but nobody can stop Ecuador. Let's work with greater energy and enthusiasm. Let's defend what's cost us so much, to build and demonstrate to that striking minority that the past will not return.
And as the 9-day journey of hundreds of protesters to the country's capital comes to an end in Bolivia, President Evo Morales gave his support to the government of Correa and condemned the right-wing Ecuadorian opposition of using the indigenous people to their own convenience.
Yo quiero hacer un llamado de verdad a los compañeros dirigentes indígenas de Ecuador, a los compañeros obreros, que no seamos instrumentos de la derecha.
I want to make a true call on all our comrade indigenous leaders in Ecuador, also to all the workers. Let us not allow ourselves to be used as instruments by the right-wing opposition.
Sabe compañero Ramallo, sabe compañeros, pero sin embargo estamos priorizando.
I admit that as presidents, we can't attend to all citizens' demands. Sometimes this is impossible. I understand perfectly all the demands of the people.
We continue our Latin American news coverage now in Mexico, where protests due to the death of photojournalist Ruben Espinosa and activist Nadia Vera have continued. In the southeastern state of Veracruz, activists, teachers and students gathered in front of the official residence of Governor Javier Duarte in the capital, Jalapa. They demanded his resignation because they insist he is responsible for the recent deaths. Espinosa and Vera had fled Veracruz to Mexico City, fearing for their lives. Before their deaths, they had both accused Duarte of threatening them. The governor has given his testimony regarding the homicides, but no details have been made public. Still in Mexico, in the southwestern state of Oaxaca, major poaching is taking place. Egg thieves are putting the existence of olive ridley turtles at risk. These reptiles arrive each year to the Mexican southern Pacific coast to lay their eggs. Up until 2014, the turtles' nesting process was protected by the Mexican Navy, but now poachers have been stripping turtles of most of their eggs.
We had permanent surveillance from the Marines here. That means there was surveillance 365 days of the year, but since 2014, the surveillance was removed as a result of the crime situation in the country because the Marines, well, it's an institution that is dedicated to helping other states with criminality problems in the country. But unfortunately, tackling one problem leads to neglect of the others.
In Peru, at least one person is now dead and 50 more injured after police clashed with striking miners. Reports are that police turned violent when workers attempted to block the main road leading to Lima, capital of Peru. And in retaliation of the police brutality, residents and miners threw stones at the officers. The police responded with ammunition and tear gas. The protesters are calling on the government to implement more flexible laws to allow for certain mines to reopen.
We have confirmed one death we think was a 45-year-old who was travelling through. His body is in the morgue of a social security hospital. 23 people have also been injured, 4 seriously and 19 less seriously.
Final preparations are underway at Washington's embassy in Havana as they prepare to raise the U.S. flag over the former interest section building in the Cuban capital for the first time in 54 years. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry will head the ceremony this Friday. This is all part of the normalization of relations between the U.S. and Cuba that began back in December 2014. There are still key issues such as the lifting of the blockade and the return of Guantanamo-based facilities to Cuba. In the meantime, though, since July, the U.S. Embassy has reopened for business, bringing new hope to Cubans.
As a Cuban, I hope the inauguration of the U.S. Embassy in Cuba will improve things for both countries. I hope all is in favor for us, for the government, for both governments, for everything to be okay.
And in context of normalization of relations, we now go to Bolivia. The Latin American country has announced that Washington is seeking to restore full diplomatic ties with Bolivia. These relations were severed back in 2008. The breakup between the two nations was as a result of the expulsion of Washington's ambassador from Bolivia by President Evo Morales. He had accused the ambassador of conspiring with the right-wing opposition to topple his government. The U.S. responded by kicking out the Bolivian ambassador there. Now, Morales called the talks for improved relations important, and he expressed his wish that they advance quickly.
It is the first meeting after a long time. We resume at the request of the United States Embassy via the Foreign Ministry. We would like to accelerate the relations between the government of Bolivia and the government of the United States.
President Morales also met with Peter Brennan, the charge d'affaires from the U.S. Embassy in La Paz. Bolivian Foreign Minister David Choquehuanca also participated. Brennan outlined how initial steps were being taken to restore normal relations with the South American nation.
We talked, as President Evo Morales said, about areas where we see mutual interest and we can work together to improve the relation between Bolivia and the United States. And as the President mentioned, one of the advances we have made related to trade is the establishment of this embassy as a partner embassy from our Trade Department.
We begin our world news with our correspondent in the United States, Bianca Perez. She has details of the situation in Ferguson 1 year after the killing of unarmed teen Michael Brown.
After a year of the death of Michael Brown, Ferguson protesters continued to make their voices heard asking for justice. 23 more people were arrested on the fourth night of protests on Monday. The controversy behind Brown's death motivated President Obama to announce changes to police forces across the country. However, the increase of deaths of unarmed African Americans this year in the hands of white police officers demonstrates no such changes.
We have to recognize in this country, people have reached a pitch point. And we can't just simply say, oh yes, we're looking into this. Oh yes, we have a committee studying this. Oh yes, we're reviewing this. And months pass.
The use of body cameras by officers has also been discussed as a solution to make officers accountable for their actions. But in cases such as Eric Garner's, cameras recording the actions of officers have not been sufficient to indict them.
Well, I think it's going to take a while. And of course, they can always turn the camera off or say the batteries were down or it didn't film. And those instances will no doubt occur.
A year has gone by since the shooting of Brown, and citizens still do not see change in the treatment of police officers toward African Americans. As death tolls continue to increase, people question why the changes that were announced a year ago have not yet been implemented.
They should listen to the people. We can get back together with the police if they trust us like we trust them. They want us to trust them. They need to trust us.
As part of the proposals made by President Obama, a 3-year, $263 million investment should aid in police department reforms. Meanwhile, citizens continue to see the loss of their loved ones with no justification. Bianca Perez, Telesur, Washington, D.C.
A lot of pain there in Ferguson. And now we give you a brief of other news stories making headlines across the globe.
As unrest continued in Ferguson, so did arrests. By late last night, over 150 people had been arrested in connection with the peaceful rallies to mark the anniversary of the death of Brown. Mourners laid dozens of stuffed animals, dolls and balloons in the middle of the Canfield Street, where Brown laid for hours after being killed. About 100 more gathered later for another peaceful rally. People in general feel things haven't improved despite government promises.
I'm pretty sure that frustration and anger can still be felt a year later, because we have not got justice. Nothing has changed. The mayor is still in charge. Some people who were moved have gotten other jobs. Nothing has changed. So we are still frustrated and angry.
The crisis in Yemen continues to grow. It is already the poorest country in the Arab region. Over 80% or 22 million of its people are in dire need of humanitarian aid. The Saudi-led airstrike that began late March have killed over 1,700 civilians. Despite the violence and air raids, pro-Houthi crowds took to the streets of Sana'a to protest against the Saudi-led coalition airstrikes aimed at ousting Houthi rebels.
Our presence here today is confirmation that we remain steadfast, and we will never retreat from our decisions and our positions, and we will stand against this new colonialism.
Libya's internationally recognized Prime Minister Abdullah Al-Thani announced he would resign next Sunday. He went on national television for an interview. He said he was sorry for any mistakes his administration had committed. He has resigned once before and later reversed his decision. His spokesman Hatem Al-Arabi told Reuters Thani was again not resigning. Libya is dealing with an intense internal conflict and chaos left behind by the violent US-led intervention to topple Muammar Gaddafi.
We end our newscast with a touch of culture. The remains of Gabriel Garcia Marquez will be sent to Cartagena, Colombia in December. The ashes of the 1982 Nobel Prize recipient in literature are currently in Mexico City, where he died in April 2014. Since his death, many Colombian cities have been asking to be honored with his remains. The writers family decided Cartagena to be the ideal place for his ashes to be permanently displayed, along with a bust that British sculptor Katie Murray is working on. The urn and artwork will be placed at a plaza near his home, which is being turned into a museum. More on these and other stories, please join us on our website, telesurdtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Regan Devines. Another news brief coming up at midday.